Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Katie Reilly. I'm the Outreach Librarian for the NOAA Central Library, and we are happy to have you back for it's not quite the second installment, but it is the second in a row talking about our research services. So a few logistics first. As an attendee, you are muted on this platform. So if you have a question or a comment, please place that in the question panel. We will take questions throughout the presentation. If you see something that you want clarification of, just put that in the question panel and I will interrupt our speaker and ask that question right then. If it is a question you think can wait until the end of the presentation, you can either type that in and let me know that it's for the Q&A, or you can hold on to that question until we get to the Q&A at the end of the presentation. We are recording this presentation, so if you do have to step away or if you want to share this with a colleague, please know it will be up on the library's YouTube channel after the fact. And lastly, if you do experience any audio or visual issues, logging off, closing this whole platform, and re-entering through your join link is going to solve most of those issues. And since this is going to be kind of a tech-heavy presentation, our speaker is going to turn off his camera after the introduction, and you can focus wholly on the screen. If you do hover your mouse over the screen itself that he's showing, you can kind of toggle and zoom or grab and move the screen around if you want to zoom in on something that he is talking about in particular. And with that, I want to welcome you to Active Learning as a Method to Speed Literature Screening. This is presented by Trevor Reilly, who is the head of public services in the NOAA Central Library and also runs our research team. Take it away, Trevor.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much, Katie. So I am Trevor Reilly, head of public services in NOAA Central Library. In that role, I also lead the research services, which started almost 5 years ago. I'm really excited about today's talk. Last week we had a little over 50 people. This one is a little more intimate of a group, but a lot of people who are returning. So thanks for coming back. This is a topic that we work with on a daily basis, and it's really in line with a lot of our goals in our strategic plan. So again, very excited to present today. So let me turn off my camera and get situated here. All right. All right, so again, just if you're unfamiliar with the research service, I'd encourage you to take a look at our webpage. It lays out the various ways our team can assist you with your research. Katie's going to drop the link here in the chat for you. And on our page, you're going to see that we've got a new video up here, so you can hear firsthand from folks who've worked with us. And if you're interested in requesting a consultation, or if you'd like to collaborate on a research project, we've got a little form here on this tab. So we're looking forward to hearing from you. And of course, just like last time, if there is a question, please feel free to type it in the chat box. I'm more than happy to stop along the way. Katie will nicely interrupt me as I go on, and I really am happy to take as many questions as you all have as we walk through this stuff, because I want to make sure it's nice and clear. But if you don't want to interrupt me and you have a question, you can save it for the end, and we will review that. All right. So as I was prepping for today, I realized that today's presentation on active learning, which is a machine learning method, and screening papers may not make so much sense for everybody. It might be confusing for folks who are not familiar with the idea of evidence synthesis as a method, or as the methods that are under evidence synthesis for literature review. So before we get started, I'm going to take a little bit of time to provide some background and provide some context in which the tool that we're going to be showing today and the methods we're going to be talking about are applied. So let's talk a little bit about evidence synthesis and the difference between traditional literature reviews and one method here, a systematic review. So first off, I'm showing you Cornell University's library page on evidence synthesis. It's a fantastic guide They just have a tremendous amount of information here, and I often go back and reference it and show it to people. So I encourage you to check it out if you want to learn more about evidence synthesis. So in a traditional literature review, you're going to use informal methods to collect and interpret studies. The overall goal of a literature review, a traditional literature review, right, is to provide a summary or an overview of a topic. And as a librarian, I'd say that review literature is my favorite. As a layman with a lot of topics that we get approached with, it helps me, when I jump on these, helps me understand that topic. We deal with a large range of research fields, and it just helps me kind of dive in and kind of understand what's happening in a field or around a specific topic. And in a traditional review, as I mentioned, the collecting of information is informal. So this means that methods may include gathering research that the author is just aware of from their time in the field. A lot of it is probably written by colleagues that they know from conferences and literature that they've gathered over time. Some searches may be done in research databases. They may even reach out to different colleagues or working groups that they've been involved on. But the process is hidden, right? There's no real ability to understand how thorough that review was, whether or not a researcher used specific databases, or if they did maybe like graylit searching, how thorough that was. There's no real documentation of what they did in order to gather that literature. And there's also little documentation for how they reviewed that and decided what to include or exclude. I'll add that in here, the appraisal process may be part of a traditional literature review, and maybe some of that may be documented, but in large part, it doesn't describe the specific methodologies by which the reviewed studies were identified, selected, and evaluated. Traditional reviews have their place in the publication world. Again, I find them extremely useful, but we need to understand that they have real limitations. Often authors' assumptions may be unknown. There can be bias in selecting and assessing the literature, and the review just can't be replicated. It can't be reproduced in any way. So moving on to evidence synthesis. Evidence synthesis is an umbrella term, as I call it, an umbrella term. While there are some definitions that include traditional and narrative literature reviews in evidence synthesis, evidence synthesis is largely understood to represent the types of reviews that are systematic in nature and which work to reduce bias, increase transparency, and reproducibility. It encompasses various review types, including systematic reviews. This table here shows the comparison between the traditional and systematic review. But there's also other ones, including systematic maps, scoping reviews, rapid reviews. There can be systematic reviews with meta-analyses. And depending on the field that you're in, whether you're social scientists, a lot of these came out of the medical field, right? Systematic reviews. Names can change. It can be a little confusing. So the systematic review is the most popular and well-known method. I referred to our last LDA as being the Justin Bieber of topic modeling. I'd say the systematic review is the Justin Bieber of evidence synthesis methodologies. It's very popular method. And again, if you look at this table, you kind of get a general understanding, again, at the different phases of the review, what each Laxon has. So in a systematic review, you are going to be registering a protocol. This is a pre-priority protocol that says all the information about what question you're going to answer, what methods you're going to use to collect the data, how you're going to assess the quality of the papers, how are you going to screen the papers, down to how many people are going to be using, screening the papers, and how you're potentially even going to resolve conflicts. All of this means that when you're doing a searching for literature, you're not just digging through your desk drawer a folder on your PC or cherry picking relevant articles in research databases. You're actually working to do a very thorough analysis on what literature is out there that is relevant to your question and topic. And to do this, you're going to need to construct advanced search strings and translate those search strings into various syntax, which go into different databases. You're going to be taking all the results from those various strings and maybe graylet searches and combining them. And so this can result in a huge number of resources. So that's why I wanted to kind of give a background about this screening software, because it doesn't really make sense to use this software or similar programs for every type of review. We're really looking at something where you're trying to be extremely comprehensive, and you do need some type of assistance in this case, machine learning, to work through that group of literature. So this is where Swift Active Screener comes in. There are other tools out there. Again, I didn't want to make this presentation specifically focus on this tool because this is a method. But we did identify this tool as something that would be very helpful, especially in identifying when to stop research. So it has some unique properties. And there are some publications on Swift. To read a general review of it, on average, 95% of the relevant articles are able to be identified after screening only about 40% of the total reference list. And in sets with more than 5,000, some study found that the 95% recall was achieved only screening 34% of the articles. So again, this can save a whole lot of time. What Swift Active Screener does is it applies machine learning to the group of literature that you put into the system, and you can actually provide seed articles to train the algorithm what you're looking for. And as you select studies, papers for inclusion or exclusion, what it will do is it's going to constantly re-rank the corpus of literature that you're screening. That way, you're only screening, it's working to screen the most relevant articles, and then when you reach the cap on the relevant articles in the corpus, you can stop screening. So I'm going to, at this point, jump into a couple of examples. Last week, we took a look at topic modeling. This one is the heat map that we looked at for vector-borne diseases. We had a researcher who's looking specifically at modeling the spread of vector-borne diseases, particularly West Nile. So this was some of the topic models that we identified, and I'm giving you this example just because I want to show you how this works in combination. So we took a lot of these topic models, went through the literature, and identified a group of seed articles. So this was the training group for Swift Active Screener. Let's jump into here. So ignore the screen right here. I'm just going to jump into this project. Okay, so looking at this project, you will see some interesting charts here. Under predicted progress, you will see this green line being the 95% recall, and this red line here would be the predicted normal screening, right? So this is just article after article would go up. I think there was a little over 3,000. Yeah, so there's 3,500, 3,531 articles that were loaded into the system. In terms of screening articles, the researcher only had to screen 1,811 before they reached that 95% recall. So this, again, saves a ton of time screening, and you can still ensure that you're being comprehensive in your search and you're pulling all the information on a particular topic. I'm going to walk through what it looks like to screen and also how we normally set up projects. and the different options that this software in particular has as you're working through a project.
Trevor,
So
I'm going to break in real quick and just ask
absolutely.
a quick question. Is the Swift Active Screener open source?
Swift Active Screener is not. Thank you for asking that question. I know that for Swift Review, which we worked with last week in topic modeling, it's openly available, not open source, but they do make it free to access. Swift Active Screener is not. However, we do maintain a license through the library for projects that we're working on with users. We can create an account. We have a certain number of seats, so it is somewhat limited, but we still have lots of room currently. So hopefully that answers it as you need, Katie. So
Yep.
let's take a look at this project. We're going to go over to screening, and again, this project is already complete. We've reached that 95% estimated recall, which you can see up here. The percentage of screened articles, they only had screened 53% of the articles, and this is what a user would see normally. So if we take a look at how this screening works, go into a detailed screen. So you can see already there is some highlighted text in green. I'm going to show everybody how that works in terms of customizing each review. And then it just says, are you going to include or exclude this question? This is the answer that the algorithm is going to watch for each article and process in line with the text of the title and abstract. So if I want to include it, we actually have developed some further questions, but if this is the only one that's going to affect the algorithm, yes or no. So if I want to include it, I can say, all right, it has to deal with Japanese encephalitis. Obviously, this one doesn't really look like it would work, but we also had the meteorological variable, so you could add anything that you saw in here: humidity, soil moisture, potentially, dew point. So all of these potential variables. These allow for the user not only to screen the articles of a corpus of documents, but also to attach some type of metadata to them as they go about for organization in the future. So that's what we've used it for in the past. And so saying, yes, we want to include it, and here are the variables that it is related to, or no, and you could say, for this study, no meteorological variable mentioned, or it's not original research. It's a letter to the editor, or it's just not relevant at all. And none of these are going to affect the algorithm. However, this no will. So it's going to learn as you screen. Let's go into the settings here for this particular review. And again, really simple to set up. They've got some great tutorials as well, video tutorials on how to do all of this. So the main is, again, include this question, either yes or no. And then we go into the literature focus, and we have two sets. We have a disease focus, we have a meteorological variable here. And you can actually add questions. They can be checkboxes, they can be radio buttons, they can be open text. So there's a lot of ways you can structure this. And then again, in no, here's the exclusion, reason, and here are the ones we set up for that. Not as useful, but if you are doing a systematic review or another evidence synthesis method, it may be good to include reasons for exclusion in here. Normally, it's not needed at that detail until you reach the full text inclusion, exclusion. All right, so then we go into screeners. So in here we have, I did not screen any articles, but I'm on this project as admin since I created it. But you can invite as many screeners as you would like. And what's really nice about this is, again, evidence synthesis methods are structured around removing bias, and as well as transparency and reproducibility. But that bias reduction is important. So you can actually change this from, in terms of how many screeners need to screen each reference. You can have 2 or 3, and then you could even have a master, screener where in addition, each references have to be screened by a specific person. So this allows for the system to get multiple inputs, and it also has a conflict resolution report too, so you can actually see where there was conflict. If one screener said, yeah, let's keep this, and the other one said, no, it's not relevant, well, that can be resolved in the system as well. Normally what we like to see is for a group to take a subset of literature, maybe 50 articles, and have them review them, make sure that they're in line in terms of their answers with one another, just to make sure that there's an understanding of the documented inclusion, exclusion, how it's going to be applied to the screening. Here's a tab here where you can actually add the keywords to be highlighted. And again, when we are screening the articles, these ones turn up in green, so the include keywords. And so we have our model, prediction, forecast, algorithm, temperature, humidity, precipitation. We have all those meteorological variables. And then there's also exclude keywords. Exclude keywords turn up in red, but we didn't add anything in here. It just depends on each project. Also, just to mention in here, inclusion keywords and exclusion keywords do not affect the algorithm. So if you're adding keywords in here, it's not going to use them to rank the corpus as you go through. It's only going to use those initial seed articles, and it's going to use the answers to yes or no for inclusion. You can actually use I've used this in unique ways. You can use, because it's kind of green and red. You might take for example, all of the vector-borne diseases and highlight them in green, and then you could take potentially all of the the weather variables and put them in exclude keywords, and that would highlight them in red. You could play around with a little bit, so but it's limited to those two categories. It allows you to change the recall threshold from 95% in case you wanted to move it up, but from the research that has been done on this software and its algorithm, 95% recall is actually pretty conservative. So they recommend 95 is going to catch what you need, and I would agree with that. All right, so let's jump over to reports. Yes. Okay. So there's some really great reports here. Again, that question and answer report. So there's this conflict report. Again, there's only one screener here, so there's not going to be anything in this conflict report, but it would give you an idea of where there was conflict in answers for inclusion, exclusion. The question answer report, again, include, and then you can select the reviewer, and it's going to give you an overview for every single article, and so you can keep that as part of your records if you would need. The screening time report is pretty awesome, and this is where you can really get an idea of how much time is saved. So in this, we can see that our reviewer took about a little under a minute to include articles, a little less than that to exclude articles in reviewing at the title and abstract level. And then you can see the total amount of time in sum that person took to review all articles, both inclusion and exclusion. So we have a little almost 800 minutes to about 700 minutes. And if we jump over to the screening summary report, you can see the amount of screening that took place over time. And so this screening started in December and ended in March. And so while the chart that I showed you previously shows, that our researcher spent a combined about 1,500 minutes reviewing the literature and including it or excluding it. So you can take that, and we know that the researcher only reviewed about half of the articles. I think it was like 53%. So we can hypothesize that it would take them roughly double that amount to actually screen all of that literature. And it took them from December to March, right? So not a small amount of time to get through those initial little over 1,500 articles, right? So it's not just the minutes that you're saving. These minutes translate into weeks and months of time, because nobody really has the time to, their full job, to sit there and screen and screen and screen. Your eyes can't do it anyway. We all know that it's very time consuming. So I think that being able to see how long it actually takes for the screening process to go through, and you can calculate how much time you're actually saving by going through this. And not only are you saving that time, you're actually getting a more thorough literature review. You're catching all of those things that you wouldn't have caught just by doing some keyword searching in a database, pulling the most relevant articles that you can find in a few sessions, reaching out to colleagues. You're going through that systematic process. You're pulling a huge amount of information. Obviously, a huge amount is not specifically related to your research, but it's going to come up because of the crossover in keywords. There's a few more reports in here, but they're not as relevant to what we're looking at today. So yeah, that's the software in a nutshell. I want to make sure there's nothing else here. We've got the tutorials, edit a review. What I'm going to do now is just to show you how easy it is to get set up on a project. And if there are any questions, feel free to tap them, put them in the chat, and I will be happy to answer as well. So I'm going to go over here to add a new review. Nothing is happening, so I'm going to, all right, let's see. There we go. So you name your review. So I had set one up the other day, tutorial, we're just gonna call this one tutorial 2, and we'll create a screening level. Here we are at the very beginning. Again, here we have include the reference, exclude the reference. You can lead to more questions. You can, so you add a new question group and you add a question. It asks you checkboxes, radio buttons, or text, just like I had said before, and whether or not it's required. So very easy to set these questions up. Then you go add any screeners you may want. You select, how many screeners need to go over each reference. Here's the options for highlighting text, just like I had said. And then if I go save, let's see, let's go back and clean this up. There we go. Okay, it's as simple as then selecting the RIS file that you want to upload. So, whoops, there you go. I hit the wrong button. So for example, if we jump in here, let me go to, yeah, so we could upload, well, that's a huge one. I don't want to upload that one. Apologies. Let's go to, it should have been in tutorials. Nope. Okay, we're just going to upload this Planet Cod, for example, and it can deduplicate, as you can see, based on title. The best thing to do ahead of this would be to deduplicate the entire RIS before uploading it. And I'm not sure what just happened here because it should not have done that. Let me go to my reviews and see what happened. Okay. Either I uploaded a weird RIS or something happened in the system. Sorry about that. That's what happens when you do things live. Let's go to my other tutorial one because I had I had things uploaded here. Okay, so in this one, 7,072 articles. I haven't done any screening. I added my colleague Lisa Clark here, as you can see, and I would just go straight into screening. This one I did not highlight any letters in here or any words in here, but again, you can see breaks it down: title, abstract, and I can include or exclude this. As I go through, I can always take a look at the report in terms of where we're at. And yeah, that's it's really not too complicated, the software itself, but I'm happy to answer questions. We have this scheduled for about 15 more minutes, so please, if you have any questions, let me know.
Yeah, Trevor, no questions so far. I think this one is pretty self-explanatory, but you do, I think, like you said, you already have to have a corpus of knowledge. You have to already have your research before you use this screener.
Absolutely, yeah, and again, it's really related to that, the methods where you are documenting your entire search strings. So for example, we talked about in the last one these two topic models and heat maps, how we changed the search string based on what we were seeing in the topic models. So you can see how we adjusted it. So all of this is documented throughout the process and an evidence synthesis method. And so when you're doing that, you're pulling so much irrelevant material or somewhat relevant, but not really specific to your question, that you need a tool like this, because the traditional method of literature review, you're not getting a lot of irrelevant stuff, right? It's more cherry picked. It's more stuff you already know about and not thorough. Takes less time, obviously, but this is a tool that can speed up one of those more systematic methods.
We do have a question. What is the final product? What does the final product look like?
Yeah, you know what? Great question in terms of what you can do here, and I'm really surprised I missed that even on my list of things to cover. So let's go over to we're going to go over to our project here again. Okay, so we have let me go over to documents. So yeah, manage references. So the end product will be, you can screen this. We're just going to say included is an RIS with all of the papers that were included, or you can, positive seed articles too. So this was the seed articles that we loaded to help train the model, and then excluded in case you wanted to export all of the excluded articles as well. But I can just hit this. I want to export it as an RIS, so you can do a CSV or BibTeX as well. And then I'll just keep my active screener ID for this one. So in the end, let's see.
So what you would get in the end then is this IRS format file, yep, which you could then use within EndNote, which is the citation management software. You can also use RIS in Mendeley and Zotero, correct? Like any citation management software will let you use an RIS file.
Yeah, so we'll do, all right. So we'll just put a little library up here. And this one is actually a good example because we did have some of the answers. I'm so thankful this person asked this question because it is so important. So we have, here we go. Here's all of the included articles based on the inclusion exclusion that was asked. And then what's really awesome, let me clean this up a little bit, turn my customs off and my rating off. So we can see things. So we've got title, abstract, DOI, author, year, journal, all of that information. Again, this information, title, abstract, it's critical that before you load the RIS into the system, that you have a very well curated metadata, right? Because again, it's using title and abstract to
Maybe
rank.
not well curated, but clean, right?
Sure, sorry,
Clean is
yes,
more
sorry.
important.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, I was thinking the metadata is curated, not the list of resources, right? It's the wrong word. But yes, a clean set, a clean metadata, full abstracts, no, no problems with that. And then as you export, you will see in the notes the answers to the questions. So included in this reference, yes. And then you have the disease focus, right? This one is dengue, and then meteorological variables, precipitation, humidity, temperature. And then so you have that just for this one single record. And so as you go through this, you'll see, if I click on notes, and I can go down and I can see all of the answers associated with this. Within
And then, yeah, then
EndNote,
you can use that to search, right?
yeah, so you can do that. You can even set up smart groups. So you can go in here and you can say if the notes field contains, and I'm just going to say dengue. So we have 602 out of the 917 identified dengue was identified by the screener as being relevant to dengue. And so then you could do another one, create another smart group. And again, you could say within the notes, if it contains, and you could say humidity, 117 were identified as humidity. And then you could even say, you can create from groups. So you can even say it's in this group, it's in this smart group, and it's in this smart group. And you can create that. And so you have 152 articles that deal with humidity and dengue. And so I didn't name these. Yeah, this one was dengue.
Yeah, I think to wrap up, like answering that question, what your final product is this RIS file, and then what you can really do is then put it into a citation management software like EndNote and
Exactly.
have a really, clean and focused list.
Yeah, and then from there, in a regular evidence synthesis method, what you would be doing is you would be doing a full text screening. So we would pull all the full text for you as part of the research service, and then you would go through and identify what's going to be included and excluded at this level. Because again, the titles and abstracts can only tell you so much.
We do have a
Any
question,
other
Trevor.
questions?
How do you get a list of references with clean metadata? Is there a particular database or source to avoid checking it manually before starting to screen?
Some databases are better than others at this, like Web of Science, better metadata than some other resources. Really, though, it would behoove you to, at least do a spot check on it. You want to make sure the titles are full titles and the abstract, at least there's, unabstract. Normally, as long as you see text in an abstract, column like this, and note the abstract is going to be fine, but there is potential for it to be incomplete or contain some, weird characters and stuff like that. That's not going to throw it off too much, but if it's incomplete, if the abstract is incomplete, that can be a problem. Gray literature is going to be, you're going to be the person putting that information in, because if you put in normally a report from an NGO, it doesn't come with an abstract. So you're going to have to select from that document what the relevant information would be for an abstract, or create it yourself. Cleaning metadata is extremely time consuming. So there are some tips and tricks that we have. Maybe that will be a good session for another time, is speeding up cleaning metadata, because we do spend a huge amount of time doing that.
Yeah. That's the last question I see, but If anyone is typing, I'll give them a moment. But I think this is a really good advertisement of the library's research services. So if you do want to work on a project and you want to work with us, we would be helping you clean that metadata and go through this whole process.
Well, thank you, Katie. And if anybody wants to reach out with questions on whether it's evidence synthesis, screening articles, topic modeling, like we presented on last week, please feel free to reach out to me, or you can email the reference team, library.reference@noaa.gov. And while I'm here and we're wrapping up, take a look at this video. Really fantastic, created by our awesome outreach team, Katie and Claire. Really hats off. This is just fantastic. It has a few of our past clients who've worked, past and current clients who we've made partnerships with, talking about how the research service has helped them in the past. And then also, we did a lot of work on this system, on this research services strategic plan. It kind of shows you where we're going in the area of developing systematic services and adding tools like this in our capabilities. So if you want to geek out on what we're doing over the next few years, take a look at that. Some of our pages also have readings because they're really great actually. So if you're interested in systematic methodologies and how they're used in decision making, some great articles here. I'd love to talk to anybody who's interested. So thank you, Katie.
Yes, thank you everyone for joining us today. And like I said, we recorded this, but yeah, if you really want that kind of personal tour of Active Screener or to work with the research team, it would be best if you reached out to Trevor or reached out to the library's reference team at library.reference@noaa.gov. But that will conclude our presentation today. Thank you everyone for coming, and I hope everyone has a safe and healthy rest of their Thursday. Take care.